Superman is poppin', and finally, we get a Superman that's actually Superman and not just an evil jerk. He rescues a squirrel. How do you get more Superman than that? And now that all that evil Superman rubbish is gone, we can finally celebrate by talking about evil Metroman. What? What's wrong with that? Look, I said I don't like evil Superman. I do like evil Supermen. There's a difference. Now, if you watch a lot of memes or YouTube shorts, then you've probably come across this quite frankly haunting image. It was created by Briman2000, a sketch artist mostly known for his dark parodies of cartoon movies. And I love it. His Mr. Peabody and Sherman parody is, no joke, one of the most disturbing things I've seen in a long time. If you're curious what existential dread feels like, then don't watch this. But I'm not here to talk about that today. Today I'm going to be covering Briman2000's Megamind sequel, Megamind 2: Fate Intertwined. Is this just another run-of-the-mill dark parody, or is there something deeper going on? Does Fate Intertwined hold the key to unraveling the Megamind universe, and will you ever look at Big Blue the same way again? All this and more next on Whose Line Is It Anyway? The show where everything's made up and the points don't matter, even though that's technically how everything works, because everything's made up and nothing matters. And as always, I expect you to watch the original before this video, which will be linked in the description below, as there are spoilers ahead. But first, a word from our sponsors. Aglet. Our story begins seemingly after the events of the first movie, with Roxanne stumbling into Megamind's laboratory. She discovers that Megamind has infused himself with Metroman's DNA, transforming him into this ultimate brain and brawn super hybrid. Megamind explains that by combining Metroman's powers with his technology, he can invent time travel and travel back to his home planet. When Roxanne asks why Megamind would even want to leave Earth, he explains that he doesn't really feel accepted by humans. He even mentions how quickly they moved on from Metroman after he died, and if humans don't care about their heroes that much, then why would they care about one who used to be a villain? Megamind actually wants Roxanne to come with him, as he explains that by leaving reality, the universe would cease to exist. It's a little complicated, because it's not like they create a new timeline and that erases the previous one. I'd argue it's almost closer to time cop rules, where you can't travel to the future because the future hasn't happened yet, so now the present will just like stop going, so there never will be a future. I don't know. Roxanne is, understandably, pretty disturbed by this whole idea. She threatens to tell Metroman, only to find that Metroman not only knows about this, but is actually in on it. Minion, being an absolute G and completely understanding that Megamind's lost his marbles, gives Roxanne the DNA gun. Now what does Roxanne do? Does she A. look for a skilled fighter and inject them with the Metro DNA and get them to fight Megamind and Metroman? B. inject herself with the DNA and go and fight Megaman and Metromind? Or C. does she use the gun to extract Megamind's powers and turn him back to normal and then defeat him? Or what comes after C? Or D. what she actually does, which is none of those things. Submit your answer to your local state senator. She uses that hologram watch thing to disguise as J.K. Simmons and then break into prison and give Hal the powers. I feel a bit mixed about this. Titan does have experience using the power, so it makes sense to reach out to him for help, but at the same time, including him feels kind of forced, like, yeah, of course he has to show up because it's a Megamind thing, and like, there's not that many other characters that you can use, so I don't know. Nevertheless, he's back in action, and so he engages in battle against the superpowered Megamind. Just a quick side note, I really like this image of Megamind right here, where he's like readying his fists for battle and his cape is flowing and he's going, "You!" It's just so stereotypically superhero, and I love it. And I have nothing but praise for this fight scene. Even though it is just still images and it's really not animated, Briman does such a good job communicating the intensity of the action. This is genuinely like the most exciting and exhilarating part of the entire story. Then finally, Metroman makes his grand introduction, and he one-taps Titan immediately. Megamind doesn't see it happen, so Metroman lies to him, claiming that he did it by accident. The last we see of Roxanne Ritchie, she is riding back into town on her motorcycle, and that is like actually just the last time we see her, so I don't know, that's a little anticlimactic. Megamind is unsure about leaving Roxanne behind, but Metroman reassures him that staying behind was her decision and that he really can't do anything to change her opinion. I like how Megamind just like moves on from her and doesn't try like kidnapping her and forcing her to go with him or anything, because the entire point of the original movie was to show that Megamind wasn't an incel. Minion explains that because of contractual reasons, he can't actually go with Megamind back to his home planet since he's supposed to be his minion on Earth, but he does offer a quick goodbye hug. Except the goodbye hug is really a distraction so he can use the DNA gun to sap Megamind's powers, but Megamind sees through his scheme. Like, literally, he heat visions him in half. We find out from some quick exposition that in order to travel back in time, they need these special suits to make sure they don't get, like, torn up in the space-time continuum or whatever. I sure wonder if this incredibly important and fragile equipment required for their survival will be damaged on their journey. So now they gotta get back, gotta get back, gotta get back, back to the past. And for some weird reason, they go to when their baby selves crash landed on Earth because they need their DNA of their baby selves to get back to their home planets. It's kinda convoluted. Obviously, this is meant to be the opening scene to the first movie, but let's see where this goes. We then find out that Metroman's pod crash landed on the Kent farm. Yes, the Kent farm from Superman. Metroman explains that they ruined his life and that he's tired of being a servant to humanity and obeying their morality, and that they hold him back, so he ends up killing them off screen. And can I just say, I love this shot of Metroman so much. And this is kind of important if you're wondering why his helmet is broken. It is because John shot him in the face with a shotgun. Then Metroman puts his baby pod in the Scott house, believing it's a more fitting home for someone as great as he is. Meanwhile, Megamind is taking DNA samples from his baby self, and after meeting up with Metroman, asks why his suit is broken, to which Metroman explains, he actually likes being on Earth. Since on Earth he has power, he's a god. Back on Metro Planet, if everyone is exactly like him, then he's not special. And then we get this amazing shot of Metroman that would be so funny out of context. Wait, did he reuse this shot? Wait, no, because they do look kind of different. I think he might have drawn over it. I didn't notice that before. That's interesting. So Megamind tosses his baby pod in an effort to save his past self. And what's interesting is that when he first finds the pod, it looks, I think it was in an apartment building. And then now him throwing it away, the obvious implication is that it's going to land in the prison, but we never actually see it land in the prison, so we don't know where it went after this. Metroman attempts to tear Megamind in half similar to how he did Titan, only to find that this power doesn't work on him for some odd reason. Then Megamind drops the hardest line in cinema history. I don't have a belly button. Then he gives Metroman a taste of his own medicine. And of course, by medicine, I mean death. Megamind's suit is damaged, but he's too late. The time machine reactivates, and with his DNA sample, he and Metroman are pulled into the past. The two are combined into a horrific glob of flesh, eyeballs, and mouths, very reminiscent of the Mr. Peabody and Sherman series. A temporal chain reaction is set off, and soon enough, a gigantic black hole is created beside Metroplanet and Megaplanet. There's something awfully familiar about all this. And that concludes Metromind, Fate Intertwined, a surprisingly really well-made comic, and all it needed was just paper and a lot of pencil. Before I go any further, there is an unfinished prototype version of this story that Briman also made. It's unfinished, it doesn't have a whole lot of artwork, and there's really not a whole lot to write home about it. Megamind's motivation for leaving Earth and the way that time paradoxes work are both slightly different, but the main difference is that in the original version, Metroman is a hero and he's trying to stop Megamind. A portrayal that's a lot more consistent with his canon self. Now, I like evil Metroman, but he's not perfect. It is hinted early on that he's kind of a psychopath, as shown by him killing Titan, but his decision to stay on Earth and kill Megamind kind of comes out of nowhere. It could just be because the comic is shorter and doesn't really have time to build him up as much, but like, he really does just flip on a dime, and if he wanted to conquer Earth, why didn't he just kill Megamind before going to the past? What I really like about Fate Intertwined is that when you boil down the plot, it is kind of generic, almost stereotypical of a superhero story. There's the evil, mad scientist trying to destroy the Earth, and the strong, courageous hero trying to stop him. Except the twist, the subversion, is that the scientist is trying to destroy Earth so he can go back home, and the hero is trying to save the Earth so he can conquer it. They're both bad guys, and yet the one who's trying to destroy the entire planet, nay, the entire universe, is somehow the less evil one. It's brilliant. And no matter who wins, humanity loses. Alien versus Predator. In Pre-Betrayal, they have a very strong bromance that I really enjoy seeing. Metroman would compliment Megamind's inventions, and Megamind would compliment Metromind's costume, and they'd both be very open and honest about their feelings and emotions. These two just extremely buff, just violently muscular men in tight clothing, being emotionally vulnerable with each other in a way that's not gay at all. That's not at all gay. They're friends. It's a friendship, and not gay. Now, there's nothing wrong with being gay, but they're just not gay. They're straight. They're two straight men. And what the fuck am I saying? In all seriousness, no joke, gay men are awesome, and straight men are also awesome. I think it's great when they can both have emotional friendships with one another, with other gay and or straight men. And I do really like their kind of dynamic, because it almost feels like peering into an alternate Megamind 2, where him and Metroman are like a buddy cop duo. But Roxanne was done really dirty. The first half of the comic, she's trying to stop Megamind's scheme, and then after failing literally once, just kinda gives up and leaves, and then is, I guess, erased from the space-time continuum off-screen. I find it hard to believe she would give up so easily, and even if you're going to go that route, we can at least see her final moments before dying, so we at least have some final word from her. And I feel like it wouldn't even be that hard to do, just have her bust into the observatory right as Megamind and Metroman are disappearing into the past, have her witness them one last time before getting erased. Like, it wouldn't be that hard to do. But what about Big Blue himself? How does his portrayal hold up? Megamind doesn't act at all how you'd expect him to. Instead of being his usual charismatic theatrical self, He's cynical, nihilistic even. In fact, he reminds me more of a different blue genius, Dr. Manhattan, which I think was actually the point. But he's not entirely emotionless. He does still care about his main friend group. Part of what makes Minion's death so tragic is that it's proof that Megamind is too far gone. He's fully regressed back to his villainous self. As much as I like the Fate Intertwined version of Megamind, he just doesn't really feel like Megamind. Watching this immediately after the ending of the first Megamind movie feels so jarring because it almost feels like character assassination, the way Megamind gives up so quickly. The only way I can really rationalize this shift is if you view Metromind purely as a self-contained narrative unconnected to the original movie. Metro Man being revealed to be like a crazy person all along doesn't at all align with the movie version, but even in this story, his personality still kind of jumps the gun and he tries to conquer the Earth. Megamind, however, does not suffer this issue because even though he's a completely different portrayal, he is a completely different portrayal that is still consistent. We never see what he looked like pre-getting juiced up, so we don't know if he was just as charismatic and theatrical as the original Megamind. There is a detail that I've been withholding from you this entire time. A detail that will completely recontextualize this entire comic. While Hal is in prison, he's channel surfing, flicking back and forth between a snail race and the news. And on the news, we see this. DNA breakthrough on 40-year-old Kent family murders. What does this mean? Obviously, we know the Kents are dead because Metro Man went back in time and killed them. But he remembers being raised by them, and he doesn't recognize the Scott house. So how can they be dead before he went back in time? Maybe Metro Man killed them in the original timeline too, but the only way that could work would be either if he, killed them as a teenager, or Metro Man is just, 70 years old, which I guess he could be. And even then, why would he give them a whole speech when he killed them in the past? Did he give the same speech twice? Did he not do it the first time? It seemed as though he was killing them for the first time when he did it in the past. So no matter what way you try to cut it, it just doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm just reading too far into it. The whole joke from the original movie is that Metro Man is Mr. Perfect, and him landing in the rich family's house is too good to be true. And so Briman is playing into that by saying it's too good to be true because it's not true. Metro Man put himself in that house. And his original parents being the Kents is just kind of playing off the mythology of Superman. Now, I understand that Fate Intertwined is meant to be a sequel and a prequel. It was originally titled Megamind 2 before being changed to Metromind. And yes, it is also meant to be a prequel to the first movie. The entire point is that it's one giant time loop constantly cannibalizing itself. And I'm not trying to ruin that, but I feel like if you look at it a certain way, you can actually canonize it to the original movie, and even decanonize Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. But to do all of that, Fate Intertwined has to be solely a prequel. Fate Intertwined is the true, untainted, original Megamind timeline. Meanwhile, versus the Doom Syndicate, as well as the canon movie timeline, are both alternate realities that were accidentally created by the original Fate Intertwined Megamind, and I can prove it. I have created a complete timeline of the entire Megamind multiverse, when everything happens and where it all happens, and the completed timeline looks like this. Going into further detail, starting at the very beginning, we have the original timeline, also known as the Dark Timeline, also known as the Metromind timeline. So we begin when Metroplanet and Megaplanet are supposedly destroyed in some unknown cataclysmic event, and two baby pods, the last survivors of each planet, are both sent to Earth. They crash land in Metro City, in Metrocity, and Metroman is adopted by the Kents. We don't really know who adopted Megamind, but we do know he landed on some apartment building or whatever. And then we have Big Time Skip, a darker version of Megamind 1. It's the same story with Metroman faking his death, Titan getting his powers, Megamind defeating him, he falls in love with Roxanne, but everything is more twisted. Every character has this deeper, darker side to themselves that hasn't quite shown yet. And then it should be right after that, we have the events of Metromind. And I'm putting the events of Metromind and not just Metromind itself because during that story, the universe is destroyed and the timeline ends there. In that same moment, Megamind and Metroman travel back to when they were babies. Metroman kills the Kents, and then he's instead adopted by the Scots, this creating the second timeline, aka the baby timeline, aka the rules timeline. In this timeline, Megamind is adopted by and raised and trained by a supervillain called... Fuck, what was his name? I'm not joking, I actually cannot remember what his name was. His name was like Evil Villain Man, Evil Villain Bad Guy Face. I don't know, I think he's like a brain at first, but then he turns into like a drag queen after that. But apparently, in this timeline, he raised Megamind. And then later in this timeline, Megamind forms the Doom Syndicate, as they mention being his like old crew. So he forms them later. Who are they? Lady Doppler, Behemoth. Their guy's name was Lord Nighty Night. And then, what the fuck was the French guy's name? Like, actually, what the fuck was the French guy's name? I think his whole thing was just being French. No, he was a mime. But he spoke. Even though mimes aren't supposed to... Oh, that's so stupid! Then we have a fake, altered version of Megamind 1. Again, same story, only instead, now every character is just a really one-dimensional stereotype of themselves, and they're all really annoying and insufferable, and the whole thing is animated on a $2 Peacock cheap-ass budget. And then we have Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. What happens to this one? He fights the Doom Syndicate. Minion is called Old Chum now, which, I mean, admittedly, that makes sense. I think Roxanne becomes mayor. And oh yeah, there's that girl. What the fuck did she do? Why was she there? Why did she need to exist? I don't know. And then after that, we have rules, and yeah, it's rules. I really don't know what to say about it. But that's where this timeline ends, supposedly. Oh, and yes, I did not name this timeline the baby timeline because it diverged when they were babies. No, I named it the baby timeline because everything in here is shit for dumb diaper babies. Why am I getting so angry about this? Does anyone else remember when the Megamind wiki got vandalized and the page for Megamind rules was just replaced with a bunch of North Korean propaganda? Was I the only one there for that? Am I the only person who saw that? Because I remember when Megamind rules first came out, I was like curious if anyone actually documented it, so I went to the Megamind wiki, and there was a page titled Megamind rules, but it certainly wasn't about Megamind rules. I think there were only 3 people online that day. The guy that put all the North Korean propaganda everywhere, me who saw it, and then a third guy that like took everything down. Although if you ask me, I think they should have left it up. Okay, so moving back up to the past, when Megamind and Metroman were doing their whole showdown, the time machine breaks and they both get sent back to before Metroplanet and Megaplanet were supposedly destroyed. And so this is the start of the third timeline, aka the canon timeline, aka the Megamind timeline. So original Megamind would die and he would accidentally create the black hole in the past, and it would consume both Megaplanet and Metroplanet. So after that, their pods crash land on Earth, they bump into each other, and Megamind this time crash lands in prison, and Metroman lands in the Scott house again. Now, maybe both of their planets would have been destroyed either way, and the time vortex just kind of sped up their destruction, so because of that, their pod flight patterns were different and they ended up crashing into each other. Maybe they didn't crash into each other in the previous timelines, because I find it hard to believe that baby Megamind would meet his future self and not remember it, since he, at the beginning of the movie with his narration, he seemingly remembers everything that happened to him as a baby because of his big brain intelligence. So I guess this would explain why he doesn't remember meeting his future self. And we also know that they went to school together, and this is where their rivalry with each other began. And because of all the differing details, it's actually likely this didn't happen in some of the other timelines, but we don't really know. We do know it definitely did happen here, since we see it. And then we get the actual, official, real, main Megamind 1. This is the movie that we all know came out in like 2012, I think. I don't know, it doesn't matter. This is the real, actual Megamind 1. And finally, we have the Button of Doom, where Megamind finally completes his character arc and accepts that he's a hero, and this is where the official timeline ends. There's nothing else after this. And then there are the comics. I don't feel like ranking where those are. I think they're a prequel to the movie, and they came out like around the same time the first one did, so they're probably just canon to timeline 3. Either that or they're just not canon at all. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. And you can also slide in the Megamind video game, because why not? That one introduces a different lineup for the Doom Syndicate that are probably more canon. They consist of a woman going through menopause and a guy who's named after what happens after you take mushrooms. The only villain a part of both lineups is Destruction Worker, and wait a minute. That that's a woman. But the other one was a guy, but if it's a different timeline, then what? Oh my god, is my entire timeline debugged? Debugged by fucking Destruction Worker of all people? No! No! What? No! I think she's supposed to be older than Megamind, which means she was born before all the timeline shifting happened, so there's no way that. Fellas, we can still salvage this. Fucking solve it. Fucking fee fi fo fucking fuck. We can still salvage this. What if they were siblings? What if there were two of them, and maybe one of them wanted to be a construction worker, and then the other didn't, but in the other timeline it was the other way around, and then okay, maybe that kind of makes sense. God, fuck. Maybe they're trans. How about that? Will that work? Well, wait. They're also Jewish. What are dude are Jewish people? Do they like trans people? I don't actually know. Let me look that up. What is the Jewish opinion on trans people? Yes. Looking like a yes. Oh, seeing a few no's. So undecided. Okay, so that changes nothing. Wait. Is the original Destruction Worker even Jewish? I don't know. Did maybe they transitioned and converted? Oh my god, I don't know, man. Maybe they both exist. Maybe one is the other's parent, or maybe there just are two Destruction Workers in both universes that have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Kind of like a blood sport situation. So here we have the full Megamind multiverse timeline. As frustrating as it was to think of, I had a lot of fun making it. If you think this is me having a mental breakdown, just wait till I do the Superman Donner timeline. I understand why some people might not like my take on the timeline, since decanonizing Metromind kinda ruins what made it work in the first place. part of the appeal is that there is no happy ending. So for me to go in and say, oh no, those aren't all the characters you grew up with, they're all just duplicates from a different universe that died, not the actual ones, then yeah, it kind of lessens some of the impact and kind of cheapens the ending. Though to be fair, my timeline does further remove the original from this monstrosity. Looking at my timeline again, it really puts things into perspective. No matter what happens with all the universes and variations, one thing is constant. Megamind and Metroman will always cross paths. Whether they're friends, enemies, or something in between, one thing is certain. Their fates are intertwined. When I said I forgot Machiavellian's name, I was just joking because of how generic his name sounds, but like, actually, what is this fuck's name? Like, I'm not joking. I genuinely cannot remember. Hold on. I'm so. Do I care enough to look it up? Let me look it up. Pierre Pressure? That's his name? What the fuck kind of name is that? He doesn't even do anything pressure related. Well, doesn't he like. Doesn't he mind control people? So. Oh, I get it. Because it's like peer pressure, but it's mind control. That's stupid. That's actually fucking stupid. Who made this? Who thought this was an okay idea to make?